Cole Thomas is a pitching coach here at Fast Performance. He wants you to throw hard, but he also wants you to have a routine. Find out why. Also, find out why you need to avoid the most common pitfalls he sees in developing pitchers. All right, I want to start off exactly like I told you. So, we were having a conversation yesterday about J bands and how players butcher it and butcher the routine in general. So, this really comes back to the question that's on the script anyway. What are some of the common mistakes you see when it comes to player development? Guys who want to get better, guys who want to pitch harder, want to have better command, all that stuff, but they run into a bunch of mistakes, right? What are those mistakes?
I guess the biggest mistakes I usually see with guys, when it comes to developing the skills they want to do is like how precise are they with the things that they do, right? Like I've had conversations about J bands particularly, right? How many guys just kind of go through the motions when they do J bands or any kind of like surgical tubing exercises where they're not they don't have their scaps in the right place or their elbows are flaring out and they're basically just doing elbow extensions instead of like external rotations or internal rotations in the shoulder, not doing what the exercise calls for. Either that's, and that could be a problem on the, maybe how I communicate, what it is they need to do. But there's also like, I've trained the guys to know what they need to do, but then they just kind of go through the motions because they don't see it as oh, this is a very valuable piece of the pie that if I can take this seriously and do this well, everything else kind of takes care of itself, right?
100%. I think that the thing about athletes too is like I asked this question to all the guests. What are the biggest mistakes? I've actually been pleasantly surprised how coachable a lot of these kids are outside of the pro level. A lot of them are receptive to coaching, the idea of new concepts. How can I optimize my training? So that's been really cool to see, right? Maybe it's just a sample bias, a population bias. I don't know, but it's been easy to sort of get these guys on the right track. And to my knowledge, obviously they seem to apply most of what we teach them. So is that probably one of the top things you look for in athletes who are looking to train with you? What does that look like from a coaching perspective? How can a guy and a kid be more coachable to get them to their goals?
I think a way that a kid can be more coachable and achieve the goals are they just need to understand that there's a platitude of perspectives on how to do what it is that we do, right? Like the saying is like there's a thousand ways to skin a cat, right? Like for you on the PT side, there's a thousand ways to improve a kid's shoulder mobility and get him stronger, but there's certain ways that you would approach it versus how I would approach it. I think the easiest way for a kid to be coachable is just being receptive to like, hey, you're coming to me because you have a problem, and obviously you're looking for answers, right? It's not coming into a training protocol or a training system or a facility thinking that all right, I'm coming to these guys, but I already know the answers because there's a reason you're here. Like, and it's like from like my remote training stuff, like there's a reason you reached out to me on Instagram because you have a problem and you need it to be solved. And I think this goes for athletes and this goes for coaches as well, where they need to take their ego out of what it is they do. You know, there's some kid, there'll be plenty of kids. I'm like, oh, I was on the all star team, 13U in my community, and so I'm the shit, right? But obviously, like then they start maxing out their ability about 14, 15 when the kids that they all beat up on start growing into their own bodies as well. And then they're kind of stuck in this place where like, all right, why is what I used to be good at not working anymore? And how can I fix it? But then and I've never had very many kids like this. Like I could probably count on my hand how many times I've had a kid who just like wouldn't listen to me or anything that I say. So it's not like that big a deal to me. Like you say, like kids are a lot more coachable than you think they are. But I also think that you also need to give them reason to be coachable, right? Like there are too many coaches who kind of fall into these laurels of like, oh, this has worked for me in the past, therefore it shall work for you. And if you, dear God, you question me, then you're uncoachable. Like, be willing to ask questions and be willing to feel like my ego. I can put my ego aside and learn something new from whoever it is I'm talking to.
Along similar note here, what do you what's your training philosophy, right? What is your philosophy in terms of player development? Obviously, it's a very broad question. It's meant to be,
Yeah.
right? Every kid is different. There are different stages in their career, different ages, different injury histories, different specific skills, different things they're good at, different things they're bad at. What is your general approach when it comes to development for pitchers in particular?
I feel that my philosophy kind of just it changes based on the kid, right? Like there are some kids who are going to come in with, exceptional velocity but don't know where the hell the thing's going. So my philosophy changes to, all right, I don't need to work on your velocity training. We might do some stuff just for intent purposes, but majority turns into, if a kid's got good velocity, I turn into the coach that's all right, focus on command, 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 or pitch design, right? If a kid is undersized, underdeveloped, and doesn't have a lot of velocity, then it changes to like, all right, let's pursue velocity at all cost, right? Because like contrary to what a lot of people will obviously say, like velocity is important. Everyone always wants to say like, oh, not everybody, but I would say like these old school coaches would say like, oh, velocity is not that all that matters. Learn how to throw strikes, throw with good command, and throw a changeup or whatever. I'm like, but that's just not the reality of the game anymore. The standard that the game has reached, where you know everybody in a bullpen in the major leagues is throwing 95 plus. Every starter, if you're not throwing 100, like even like at the bottom levels, guys are, was it like Kyle Hendricks for the Cubs sits 89, and people go like he's a soft thrower, but he throws harder than 99% of the players who play in this game, right? So velocity has to be your entry level. So that always kind of guides the philosophy, like on the base level, is like you need to throw harder. Like that's just you need to throw harder. Like same like telling a quarterback like you need to throw the ball further and be more accurate to make these easier passes, right? So velocity obviously starts off with the philosophy, but then it also just changes based on what a guy needs. Like a prime example would be Easton Miller, the kid I have who's going to he's down to basics right now at the Air Force Academy because that's where he's going. But he came in, I mean, on good days he's 91, 92 before he started training here. And it turned out like I don't need to work on velocity. Like a little extra tick in velocity is going to help, and we did spend a lot of time doing that, but for him, it was just, all right, I throw 89 to 91 at a high school level. I'm already committed to a D1. What's going to be the thing that kind of takes me over the top in the next stage, which is going to be for him was just pitch design and control work. Like, how can he throw? He's got four plus pitches, with the velocity and the movement. He's got an incredible changeup, a really good slider, a really good curveball. Now it turns into how can I get him to throw all four of those consistently for strikes? And that kind of morphed into our philosophy with him is turn all four of those pitches into automatic strike pitches. And and like it goes back to the kid we talked about earlier, like what sets him apart. Easton was a kid who took everything very, very seriously. Like all of his band work, all of his plyo care work, all of his long toss, like there was not a single thing he skipped over or ever did the motions on. Took everything super seriously. Everything we did had a super serious, and there was a focus and an intent. And then the results go and speak for themselves. He threw 55, I think through 55 innings. He had 100 strikeouts, 18 walks. He had a 1.07 ERA this season. He got, PBR, Colorado Player of the Year. Like that's what just goes to show you like the value of that intent and just picking the right philosophy based on what the kid needs.
No, 100%. And I think I found on my side too, and I don't know what you think of this, that a lot of guys come in high school age, college age in particular, and I'm surprised at the amount that don't recognize how important a routine is. You and I are on the same page all the time. We talk all the time about a routine. Do you know what a day of is? What's a day after? What's a day before? What are those structured like? What's that routine like? How much are you lifting in season? Do you tend to have to create these routines for these guys? Or is it more so, they have a routine and you're fine tuning and tweaking? I know it's going to depend on the guy, but I'm going to ask a better question. That wasn't the best question. The best question is, why is a routine so important?
I think a routine is so important because it's controllable. And it's something I tell our guys all the time. It's like you've got to control the things that you can control. Because there's in baseball in particular, there's so many things that are out of our hands that are just, you're never going to be able. Like I made a post about it. I think you saw it where I'm just like, this game is dumb.
Yeah.
I love baseball, but it is the stupidest sport.
Well, that's why that's why the advanced analytics are so popular because we have to try to distill down and boil down like, okay, what are these numbers for this player in this particular situation and circumstance
Yeah,
really telling us? Which is
right.
why I think ERAs, and I think this is well known at this point, ERA is
Yeah.
not a great stat
But
necessarily.
but it's like my post on Instagram about it, where it's just like, you've got to throw, the pitching motion is a super complicated motion where you've got to make sure everything's timed up correctly in the right position each and every time, and you've got to do that for 100 pitches, or you've got to do that for whatever, like for a whole inning. Each and every pitch needs to be as close to perfect as possible to get the desired result, right? Then you throw the pitch, and once that ball is out of your hand, now you got to throw inside a 17-inch by 19-inch box. That's obviously, up for determination based on some
Very
guy who's
that's a
getting paid.
subjective box. Sometimes it's a trapezoid.
And yeah,
If you're
yeah,
Angel
and it's all.
Hernandez, sometimes it's I don't know, an octagon.
Yeah, like yeah, you're putting your trust into. All right, here I accomplished my part of the goal. Now I got to go based on some dude who's getting paid 35 to 65 bucks a game, who has an idea of where the strike zone is, but is not precise. You got to go based on his judgment, and then before that, even on his judgment, you're trying to get a batter to either swing and miss or not swing at all, and then if he does swing and makes contact, then you've got to hope that your defenders behind you can do their jobs, can competently catch a fly ball, field the ground ball and make the throw to the plate to get the desired result. Like there's so many things that are outside of your control, which is why I go back to what you said, like, or you asked, sorry, we went on a little tangent there, but why you want to set up routines is, create something that you can control, that you have the ultimate control over. Because then I tell these guys all the time, like, if you can create, if you can make a routine and you can control it and you can be consistent, if you can control all the things that are controllable, all the big things have a tendency to kind of work out in your favor.
100%. Absolutely. And it's funny because there's a crossover here between PT learners, right? Students, residents, people that I talk to like in my space and baseball in the sense of that specific routine. Some guys, and again, this is another thing you and I hammer are so huge on, right? At the level of guys that we see at this point, many of them, not all of them, many of them are in sort of that basic training mode, right? They're sort of in the boot camp mode. Like, all right, let's absorb as much as we can. Let's learn as much as we can. Let's learn the basics and foundations and then build up from there. And a routine is a huge part of that. So going back to what I was saying in the beginning is we tell PT students and residents and learners who are in PT is, hey, you want to control what you can. And what I mean by that is, hey, you can control if you think it's a neck issue or versus a shoulder issue, you can control treating the shoulder. And if you treat the shoulder and only the shoulder, you keep it to something super simple. You go through your routine, you give them what you would give them for what you think is a shoulder case, and they come back and hey, the shoulder's better. Looks like you were right. They come back, shoulder's worse or it's the same. Okay, well, you control that environment. You know that you went through your shoulder exam. Okay, now let's take a look at the neck, right? So it's I know I'm going to bring it back. It sort of might be an abstract comparison, but with players, it's like they don't know. Sometimes, oh, dude, my slider just wasn't coming out, or man, the biggest one, right? You've heard this 100 times. My velo was down. Why
Yeah.
was my velo down? My velo was down. And then you talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, well, I was scrolling on my phone last night until 1 a.m. I got up and I had like a blueberry muffin for breakfast. I got to the stadium and I didn't really drink that much water as like I usually do. And my girlfriend and I are whatever. We might break up and I'm stressed, right? So all those things, obviously, that's something you can't control. What you can
Yeah.
control is what time you go to bed. What you can control is how much water and food you're intaking. What you can control is peaking at the right time with a structured throwing routine and a structured throwing program. All of that stuff, right? What your routine does for you is number one, it should be targeting your deficits, right? It should be hitting on the things that your weak points are. And the other thing that it's doing is obviously getting you ready to get into that mode, get locked in, understand what you're doing, what the intent is. You use the word intent. I love that. Locking into what the purpose and the goal of the day is. If it's a light day, make it a light day. If it's a bullpen day, make it a bullpen day. If it's a velo day, like throw on some, Cole's got a decent rap hip hop playlist. I got to say, I'm not the biggest fan of your, heavy rock metal stuff. So
Lame.
I do love the hip
Lame.
rap and hip hop though. So anyway, all that's a long winded way to say, you know, a routine is one of the most important things that you can have as a baseball player, as a pitcher. And the other thing is obviously focusing on the fundamentals and the basics. So
Yep.
when it comes to that particular topic, right? Structuring throwing, structuring training. What is the biggest piece of advice you have for a kid who might be on their own and they're not going to Cole Thomas Fast at Cole Thomas Fast on Instagram to ask more questions, but they're trying to structure their training and the routine? What's the number one piece of advice to get them to start there?
I think the biggest thing is being able to control the type of the day, right? There's too many guys that we have quite often that everyone who's going to listen to this, I would imagine, knows what a governor is, right? Your ability to control your intent day in and day out. Because we've had a platitude of guys who come in and they'll come in for a heavy intent day and they're throwing the ball hard as they can. Say like with our plyo balls, like they're throwing the balls hard, they're doing what they need to do to get prime themselves for the velocity day. Doing really well on the warm up. They're throwing they're throwing the piss out of the plyo care balls, everything to do to prime them. Then they come in for a recovery day after the velocity days, and they're throwing the ball with the exact same intent, at the exact same volume, at the exact same just level that they want or for a velocity day. And then they'll come in. It works for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then they come in for the 4th week and they see if their velocity's dipped, and they go like, "Why is my velocity dipped?" It's like, because you didn't control, your intent for the day. You didn't control your intent and your volume. Like, and this, and everyone I imagine that will listen, like, you can't follow up a high intent, high volume day with another high intent, high volume day.
I'll stop and I'll pause on that's a really good point too. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. You just keep bringing up really good points. Okay, so there is a difference. Talk about the difference between why is that important? What does a high intent day look like? Why is it important to alternate with medium and low intent days?
So, the way I structure our programs, like in my ideal world, I look at it from a Monday through Sunday strategy, right? Like Monday is a high intent day. Tuesday would be our low intense recovery days. And that's kind of the point. Is like the point of a recovery day is to recover. That is your number one priority, is to develop a level of chronic workload while making sure that we stay below a certain threshold of throws and a certain threshold of intent, right? Like, say like my Mondays are like my plyo care velocities, right? Plyo care velocity is not a whole lot of volume, but it's high intent. So you're trying to just go balls to the wall for a short amount of time, right? Then you go into the recovery day on a Tuesday, where we maybe only do 1 or 2 plyo care drills at 50% intensity, and then you go do some catch play, also at 50% intensity for like 10 to 25. So we're going to max out maybe about 55 to 65 throws at 50% intent. So it's not high. It's not going to be stressful, especially for a guy who's well trained, of course. And then Wednesdays are kind of, like you say, it's our medium intent day, where I want to be about in the 60 to 70% range on the intent scale, like a 6 to 7 out of 10. But I'm going for volume on those days more often than not. These are, when I say say for like a sprinter, these are kind of like I'm going to go run for a mile just to like work on my baseline cardio or something like that. All right. Then you do the velocity recovery day on Thursday to prime it's more or less just to prime yourself for the Friday high intent day. So you're going to go through the same routine Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then Friday is that's my like big, all right, we're going to go for high volume or we're going to go for high intent, right? We're going to do a full slate of plyo care balls. We're going to go through a full, or not full, but like a pretty decent long toss phase to make sure that we're primed and ready for our run and gun pull down kind of day, right? Whatever verbiage you want to give it. And then, we're doing, probably somewhere around 20-ish, 24 throws at high intent with different weights of baseballs, throwing them as hard as we can, right? Then you go obviously into your recovery after that. Then you take Saturday is going to be your other recovery, the last recovery day of the week, working to prime yourself, get yourself back to equilibrium from that high intent day. And then usually my Sundays are like, just don't do anything. Like if you're going to do anything at all, go for like a walk outside for 20, 30 minutes, listen to a podcast, listen to a book, listen to some music, just go relax. Right. But that's why I structured that Friday is like, that's the everything goes out the window. We're throwing everything as hard as we can, as much as we can, because I know I'm going to give you a recovery day and an off day 2 days after that.
Awesome, man. That's really, really good advice there. I think that the best thing that you can do as an athlete is The foundational basics is structure it the way that Cole's talking about. You have high intent, medium intent, and low intent. I talk to a lot of guys, high school pitchers, even some semi-pro guys, and they will say, like, I had no idea that a low day was necessary. A lot of these guys who are in between, right? That the
Well,
college
it's
ranks
sometimes even
and
more necessary than the high days. Even
oh,
more.
100%, 100%. There has been like this common theme that I've seen anecdotally with some guys that I talk to is they're grinding, they're trying to get, they're trying to get an affiliate contract, whatever the case may be, and they think to themselves, I just need to grind as hard as I possibly can. That's true. You need to work hard, but you also need to work smarter, right? It's not one or the other. I know it's like work smarter, not harder. No, you need to work hard and you need to work smart. And the scientific basis, it doesn't matter who is saying this, right? It doesn't matter who you're arguing with. Nobody's going to argue that the idea of periodization, aka that predictable roller coaster that we talk about, is the most it's the most scientific based way to structure training, sprinting, working at your computer, right? Like having periods of highs and lows and peaks and valleys, and knowing hey, that next valley is coming because I was just at this peak, and then as soon as I hit that valley, I'm going to be ready to come back up, right? So it's going to be super important. That's the biggest thing that I think guys miss, at least on my end. So I really wanted to
Well,
hammer the importance of
and
a
it,
routine.
it it's just hard. Let me last point on that, but it's just hard. Like, and for the majority of our guys that we bring in, they're high school guys and they're college guys, and they're very influenced by social media. They're very influenced by this, what they think is what's going on versus how much is actually seen, right? So they'll watch videos of Driveline, they'll watch videos of Tread, they'll watch, Baseball Ranch or, the Armory down in Florida. And, what do all those guys post on social media? It's the fun stuff. It's the pull downs. It's the, guys getting up on the mound and throwing 100 and throwing, striking everybody out with like the nasty sweepers or the changeups that, fall off the table that got you just sit there and just like, I don't know how anybody can hit that. But you only see the fun stuff. You don't see the 90% of the rest of the time of taking your recovery seriously, doing the foam rolling seriously. How well do you execute on your bands? How well do you execute on your sleep? How well, when you get into the weight room, are you maximizing your time? Like it, and this is like from my standpoint is like from a high school coach, having been a high school coach in the past and being a trainer in the past, where I've had kids who go like, I'm like, oh, I'm super tired. I'm like, well, why are you tired? It's like, oh, I was in the weight room yesterday. Okay, cool. How long were you in the weight room? I was probably there from like I got there after I left school. I was there 4 o'clock, and I don't think I left till 6. I'm like, why were you there that? It's like you're not maximizing your time. You're not
Not at
maximizing
all. Super
everything you need
inefficient.
to do. It's like I tell people all the time, or some of these high schoolers, because they just don't know, right? Because they're in this conflict, right, where they want to be really good at baseball, but they also see like these Sam Suleks or the Chris Bumsteads, like all these bodybuilders, and it's kind of juggling and playing tennis between these two things. Like, I really want to be good at baseball, but I also really want to get chicks, or, for like, there's, it's teenage brain. Like you and I've been there. Everyone who
100%.
listens to this
Yeah.
podcast has
100%.
been in that place where like you're playing tennis with, what do I really want in life? Like, what do I really want in this stage? And so, and then it goes back to like with the low intent days. It's very hard to do a low intent day and feel accomplished, like to feel like you actually did something. It's very tough for guys to understand that less is more mentality, especially when it comes to the recovery days, where guys will come in, they'll do a recovery day. I'm like, how are you feeling? It's like, I feel like I could do a lot more. I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. That's all you're gonna do today.
If you leave a recovery day feeling like you could have done more, that's you did it right. You did
Yeah.
it the right way. If you leave your recovery day and you're like, "Whoo, got a good pumping, feeling pretty good, a little tired," you did a recovery day wrong.
Yeah.
You
But
absolutely did a recovery day
But
wrong.
it's they need to understand what is the purpose of the recovery day. It's to recover from the last workout and prime yourself for the next one.
100%.
But
100%.
unless I'm going at 100% all the time, I'm not in this grind culture or the hustle culture as we know it today on, with everybody that you follow on social media or on YouTube. It's you can still hustle and go hard, but it's how much can I hustle in the restraint and the constraints that I give myself on the recovery days. Like today's a 50% day. How can I maximize my 50% for that day? whether that
100%.
additional soft tissue work, additional band work, additional just, breathing. Like so many guys just struggle with the breathing side as well. Like, being able to, take a deep breath for 5 to 10 minutes and just get your heart rate down and teach yourself how to, even in high stress situations, put yourself in a mind state that like, all right, I'm okay. I can deal with this. Because you know, there's a whole industry about just how to return human beings to being able to breathe functionally. that you know Something that's so innate for us, we kind of have to reteach ourselves how to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that you're right. The hustle culture is really something that uh, it's misunderstood. I think
Yeah.
it's misunderstood. Hustle culture and grinding and trying to meet your goals does not mean redlining every single day. When I say redlining, I mean you're not literally maxing out like the meter on your car. You're not taking it to the maximum RPMs, right? Every single day, every time you take it out for a drive. Um, the best thing that you could do is plan and program those recovery days, those medium intent days, and make sure that you have space in between them so that you can really peak and have energy to really hit your PRs. Otherwise, you're just wasting your training.
And
Last,
we want to
but
maximize the days that need to be maximized.
exactly, 100%. How now I'm gonna move off here because we could talk all day. We might eventually record again because we're always bullshitting about
Dude,
something. So
we'll
we
need
should record another one. But for
we'll need
now, I want to get
we'll need a bunch of sequels for this one.
that's right. Yeah, I want to get your 60-second soapbox. I almost want to pigeonhole you to baseball, but I'm not going to. So you get a 60-second soapbox on anything: training, life, movies, baseball. You need to throw out a Stephen A. Smith hot take here.
I'll keep it to baseball. And I thought when I saw your question, because I'm not really a hot take guy. I'm pretty like
You're pretty pragmatic. I agree.
yeah, I'm pretty pragmatic. I don't look for conflict, but I think having been in both shoes, I think more and more people need to not take their club ball coaches or their high school coaches too seriously. Like, especially like having been a high school coach, like it's one of those things where, and obviously I'm a little bit different where I was a high school coach and a pitching trainer where I kind of everything that I do is based around this, right? But the vast majority of guys will have their high school coaches who's also their math teacher or a social studies teacher or a history teacher or even a gym teacher, right? Where their mind is not always on the baseball stuff, right? So then they'll give you tips and they'll give you things to think about, which is fine. But you also need to remember, like, this person doesn't live what he talks about. Like, and this is just tooting my own horn, more or less, like just making myself feel good about myself. I'm like, but like, I'm a high school coach and training pitchers, from all around the state and seeing guys from different aspects. Like if your coach, and we have this tendency that we have too many coaches who they learn something, the last thing they ever learned the last year they played baseball, whether that's in high school or college, and whatever the last thing they learned as a player is what's going to be their dogma for the rest of their life. So everyone's had a coach who goes like, well, this is the way I did it. And like it worked for me, so therefore it'll work for you. Like I had a coach, my junior college coach in Kansas was that exact kind of guy. All right. Dude played like 6 years in the big leagues. He's, you know, won a national title at Wichita State. Wichita State's only national title. He was their star pitcher. So to me, it's like it sounds good. Like, oh, well, this worked for this guy. He got drafted. He's a, most outstanding player of the College World Series. He's on the All Decade team for College World Series and all that. Like this guy's got some credentials, but he just wasn't a good coach. And he and I didn't really vibe in that way because it's just like, well, this worked for me, so therefore it'll work for you. I'm like, but I'm not you. And Jason, a person you can have on the spot, is the same way. Where when he played with the Astros, they would do their pitching camps or like their like elite pitching camps for minor league guys. And Roger Clemens would do that. And he would tell me stories like Roger would just go, well, I'm the Rocket. Just do whatever I did and it'll work for you.
Yeah, that reminds me of that's funny. That reminds me of some stories that I'd hear about like when Michael Jordan bought the NBA team, right? The
No
Bobcats at the
Bobcats, yeah.
time, right?
Charlotte.
And they were just bad.
Yeah.
And he would go into the locker room and like the essential takeaway from his like pep talks would be like, just be like me, like when I played.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, Mike, that's not quite how it works
Right.
for everybody.
Well,
So
it's like if LeBron ever becomes a coach and he's gonna like go look at a 6'1" dude point guard and just go like, all right, just do what I did. Like,
right, yeah,
also put on 7 inches and about 100 pounds.
Right, exactly. So, no, that was really good, man. So I think the takeaway there is, you know, respect your coaches, understand that you are still a student of the game. You're always a student of the game. You can learn something from everybody,
Mhm.
but you can either have 20 years of experience or you can have 20 years of the same experience. It might be hard to suss out and know, but if something doesn't seem to jive with you, just keep asking questions. And the best way to find out if somebody's willing to really tailor and individualize your program, your goals, your plan, whatever you want to do. They will answer the questions and not get frustrated with you immediately. They won't tell you to shut up. They won't tell you to stop asking questions. They won't tell you that it's worked for 100 guys. They'll answer your questions and they'll have actual good reasons to give you if they think that this is the best program you should be on. If somebody shuts you down right away, that's a sign that you should maybe sign up
Yeah.
with Cole Thomas at Cole
I
Thomas Fast.
I look at it from the standpoint, like the easiest way to look at it is it's have a healthy level of skepticism until someone can give you a definitive answer. Like you said, like if I ask you a question and you just say it, and the guy just and your coach goes just like, just because I did it, just do what I did. Like that's not a good answer. Like give
Right.
me a lot, and this maybe just how my brain works, where I'm just like, someone tells me to do something just for the sake of doing it. I'm like, well, what's the purpose?
Why? Yeah.
Why am I
Mhm.
doing this? You
Mhm.
know, like an easy story, and I'll be quick with it, where I was at Concordia University my 4 year. We did a whole conditioning bullshit thing, and we missed our conditioning mark. And our assistant coach, who is my age, so that's a funny dynamic. and
That's weird.
and but like our punishment was, all right, you got to do 14 50-yard bear crawls was our punishment. And I'm just sitting here doing these bear crawls, gassed out of my mind because it's 6:30 in the morning. I don't want to be there. And I'm just like, why? Like, how does this make me a better baseball player?
Right.
And
It
that's what
doesn't.
I think people need to ask is, how does this help my career? How does this improve me? Like 14 50-yard bear crawls is not going to make me a better baseball player, no matter how much a coach would say, like, oh, well, it really helps your scouts. I'm like, yeah, to a certain extent, but if I'm gassing myself out, it's not going to help me. Like that's what
Exactly.
my head coach gave me. He's like, well, bear crawls are good for scabs. I'm like, you're not wrong, but
Exactly.
it's very
100%.
it's context dependent, right? And it's like for like a mental skills thing, right? Like I'm not going to be in the standing on the bump in the national championship game, it's bottom of the seventh inning, game tying runs right there on third base, and I'm just going to sit there and go, man, I'm so happy I completed those 14 50-yard bear crawls because now I'm
Right.
totally prepared for this
Now I'm
moment.
there. Now
So
100%.
you know, it's like give me a like go to a coach, ask him, be real with him, like ask him questions like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this? Is too many kids are scared to ask those questions, and I get it. It's very intimidating to go to an authority figure and kind of ask him like, hey, something doesn't smell right here.
Right. Exactly.
Like, so
100%.
it's
Don't be afraid to
intimidating.
ask questions. Don't
But
be
it's
afraid
like,
to
yeah,
ask
but like,
questions.
but you gotta remember, like, this is your career, dude, not
Mhm.
his, not your coaches, not. I mean, I have a personal investment in every athlete, but I'm like, this is not my career either. This is yours, and you've got to be put some diligence into. All right, I want to maximize the time I have playing baseball or playing whatever sport it is that you're going to be playing. You got to make sure you're getting the best advice and the best feedback possible.
100%. Cole, as much as I'd love to keep chatting and chopping it up here, I have to actually go take care of athletes now. I
I
forget
know.
that's my day job sometimes. So make sure you follow Cole at Cole Thomas Fast. I'm sure this will be just part one of many, many different episodes that we chop up. So thanks again, Cole.
Yeah,
Everybody
thanks
follow
for
him on
having me.
Instagram. Appreciate the perspectives.
Awesome.